really affect the growth rates of the Chinese, and more or less the scenarios, even if they have a moderate revaluation, are not that much falling back to the year 2000. But if you then compare India, here again you will have a bigger, because India doesn't have such a strong industrial base. But you see that the BRIC countries were not as much affected as the what you call mature economies. So this is one, I think, of the conclusions we will have to draw here, that we have to move much more to the famous BRIC countries. Now, if you compare growth rate, world growth rate, and Austria, you see that Austria has always been lacking, and also in the crisis we were falling down deeper, and the difference of the real economic growth rate has a tendency to increase after each crisis. We have a problem that we, after each crisis, we have an unemployment, and we are not able, after the end of the unemployment, to come back with the employment. So this is again a question of our schooling, our university system, that we are not bringing after the crisis the people back to work. So we will have quite a constant unemployment. We don't retrain the people enough, because if they're unemployed, they have a capacity which is not asked by the market. So the retraining perhaps should be done more, but this is a serious problem we are having. Now, if you look at the exchange rate, everybody always complains about the exchange rate, like about the weather, but basically, the European Union started 99 around 1.6 was it? Then it went down, then it came up again, and now you see the relation euro and dollar. People now say it's around 1.2. If you would have this famous McDonald index of the economies, but now it's going up. Yesterday it was 1.39. So it means that you see basically here the Americans are really trying very hard, without saying in public, to lower the value of the US dollar in relation to the other currencies. If they cannot make pressure on the Chinese to revalue, so that at least will try to bring the dollar down. They're not very much concerned. When we talked in Washington, they said, well, when I neglect, we can't do anything about it, and we will not say what the value of the dollar is in 1 year, only the Secretary can do it, of State can do it. Now, the Americans, if they, for example, have a high inflation, let's say around 4%, this means that within 10 years, the external debt, which is in other currency, is more or less evaluated by 50%. Now, if you look at the Federal Reserve Board, they have an obligation to keep the stability of the currency, but they also have at the same time the obligation for economic growth rate. If you look at the European Central Bank, the European Central Bank has only the obligation of stable currency. The text which the European Central Bank has to follow, I quote it, they have to keep the inflation rate below 2%, but close to 2%. So this is the only obligation which Trichet has to do. He doesn't have to look for growth rates, contrary to the United States Federal Reserve Board. So this means that they have the obligation, if the inflation goes above 2%, really to increase the rates, which the Americans will not do. And this is also one of the reasons why now the Americans are more concerned about inflation, and they will have a new, what they call quantitative easing. They will print US dollars. And the Americans have an argument. They say, United States dollar is the world reserve currency, so most of the dollars disappear in the pillows from China to South America or in Russia, whereas the euro is not the same level world reserve currency. It's around 40%, and perhaps now it's even devalued. So the Americans have a big advantage having this status because they can't print money, meaning they can't spend money, and it doesn't show up in their own inflation immediately because this money is used from Nigeria to China or kept in hoarding. So this is not the case with the euro, and this is one of the problems we are facing about the criticism which is always faced, especially in the US economist Krugman and US newspapers, that the euro will break up and all those stories. But this was also the reason why they had to organize a much more heavy savings package to keep the euro stable after you had this really development in Greece, which was terrible. Now, so this is, I think, the euro, in my personal opinion, but we can discuss this later, is now safe from all the hiccups from Greece. We have system in place around 740 billions. Our old friend Klaus Regling, which you all know, from Brussels, he is now organizing this machinery. It is kept outside of the Commission. It is in Luxembourg, according to Luxembourg society, so they have a 30,000 deposit, 30,000 euros. Now, this hopefully will never be used, but it is in place. If something happens to countries like Greece or Spain or Portugal or even France or hopefully never Austria. Now, this is something where you have the obligation of members that they will help in, and this is limited for 3 years. So I think in future we should be able for the next 3 years to have the stability of the euro. What happens afterwards, nobody can say, because the Germans hope that they can change the Treaty of Lisbon in such a way that you will have a much stricter punishing way if a member state goes along these 3%. Now the last thing, and I'm now at the end, this is the global, this is the next. Yeah. Now, if you look at our main discussion which we will have, you see that Austria has been strongly invested in the European Union, in the euro area, second one, and our Pacific rim was more or less East Europe. This is where the Austrian companies invested heavily. Eastern Europe, this is where the Austrian banks, insurance companies went in heavily. In the same time, Germany was more or less concentrated on the reunification of Germany. So all the German money went more or less to the eastern German part, whereas the Austrian used this moment before really to go heavily in the Eastern European countries. Now, this you can say has somehow backfired, but on the other side, the Eastern European states, and we should be frank and honest, they say you have been making huge profits, Austrian companies, when you were buying up. The Eastern European states are sometimes contributing more than 60% to some banks, insurance companies. Now we are in difficulties, and you cannot leave, you must stay there. And I think this is one of the good news, that the Austrian companies have stayed there in difficult times. We have tried to motivate all our partners in the European Union to make a fund of 50 billion in case emergency funding is needed, especially in countries in the Eastern European countries. Now, part of it was used, but part of it was not used. It was basically a balance of payments help. If you look then the United States, America, it is United States is only 2.8% of our exports. And basically, in the last 2 years, the exports of Austria were cut in half to the United States for 2 reasons. Red Bull, who is exporting this nice drink, which you all drink before the exams, is sending the Red Bull stuff not anymore from Vorarlberg, but it's sending them from Switzerland because they were scared that the United States could retaliate against their export in connection with some WTO actions, beef, letting out the US beef imports, and wheat and whatever it is on the GMO issue. The second thing is now the BMW four-wheel drive car, the X1 to 3, which was assembled in Graz, is now produced in the United States, not in the area of Detroit, but in the southern part of the United States. Why not in Detroit? Well, the labor unions are very militant in Detroit, and this is the reason why they decided, like Mercedes, to go in the southern part of the United States. Now, BMW is now exporting their four-wheel drive cars from the United States to China. And if the bill, which is now in the House of Representatives against China, will be implemented, this will hit BMW exports. So you see how the world is strongly interconnected in all these elements. Now, my last picture, and then we finish, and we could, is the question of the revaluation. You all know, as I told you at the beginning, the United States is pressing extremely China to make revalue the renminbi. Now it has been revalued 2.66%. However, all the other currencies of the emerging markets have been revalued since the beginning of this year in a quite extensive way. India, Korea, Taiwan, Brasilia, 28.73%. Why? Because too much money has been actually flowing to Brasilia, and they have introduced restrictions because they are scared that oil will double. The same goes for Mexico and South Africa. So you see all these BRIC countries have revalued, and they are scared that we will have now a kind of a currency war, where everybody tries to lower his own currency with the aim to catch export. Everybody wants to catch export, everybody wants to export itself out of the deep crisis which we're in, but if everybody does it, it's a zero-sum game. But nevertheless, and this is my last sentence, we know, as I tried to tell you before, that emerging markets will have in the future much higher growth rates than we in the European Union and the United States. We look a little bit old-fashioned, and I think this is one of the discussions we could have. And I stop here, and we continue our next element. Please.
Thank you, Ambassador Dr. Woschner. Thank you very much for your introduction and your interesting speech, and also that you are representing Dr. Blusek, our patron, today here. And also a very warm welcome to the Secretary General of the Austro-Arab Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Kujar, who is also on the panel. And also a very warm welcome to Mr. Diplom Engineer Manka. He's a member of the board at Strabag. Very warm welcome to you. And I also would like to welcome all the speakers who are coming later in the next forums. I would like to start with Radovan Jelasic. He's the former governor of the Serbian National Bank. And followed by Josef Meyer. He's the head of the Department of the Federal Ministry of Economics, Family and Youth. And Konrad Penstech, he's a former board member at Siemens. and also very welcome to his